There's nothing more tantalizing than a dangling thread. Well, except for one thing, a dangling revenge thread is even more exciting, and the names on this list will have their vengeance in this life or the next. Being a Star Trek villain has certain opportunities, most particularly for those who have some of their biggest plans foiled. Perhaps the entirety of Starfleet stands before them, ready to beat them back with a volley of torpedoes. Maybe they operated in secret, trying desperately to fly under the radar, only for intelligence officers to get all up in their business. The best villains will have backup plans upon backup plans, ready and waiting, loaded in the chamber to fire into action immediately upon their defeat. Now for this list, we're going to concentrate on those villains who were left alive to dish out that revenge, as opposed to those who need to be avenged. It may be a long time coming, but these are the names of those who are furiously signing some death warrants. I'm Sean Ferrick for TrekCulture, and here are 10 Star Trek villains who must get their revenge. Number 10. Maj Cullah. Star Trek Voyager featured the Kazon, various groups based on LA gangs. They were divided into different sects, all of whom traditionally went to war with each other on a dime. When the USS Voyager arrived in the Delta Quadrant, they quickly found something they could all agree on. They really didn't like that Starfleet ship or crew. Maj Cullah of the Kazon Nistrum came the closest to destroying the dreams of this stranded ship. With a lot of help from turncoat Seska, he managed to commandeer the ship, stranded its crew on a nearby planet, and set about becoming the dominant force in his corner of the galaxy. Thankfully, he was thwarted by Tom Paris, Lon Suder, and some helpful Talaxians. Still, despite Seska's death as the ship was being retaken, Cullah survived. Kazon are not traditionally known for letting things go. The Kazon are still out there, evidenced as recently as the pilot episode of Star Trek Prodigy. With that show bringing the action back to Cullah's part of the galaxy, he is presented with the opportunity to right his perceived wrongs. After all, in a culture dominated by alpha male nonsense, losing his prize, via the aforementioned, back to Janeway must still smart years after the fact. He may not be the greatest tactical leader in the galaxy, but he also seems like someone who would do whatever it took to save face. We may not have seen the last of him. Number 9. Ajur and Boratus. Ajur and Boratus were two Vorgon criminals that hailed from the 27th century. They travelled back in time to the 24th century in search of the Tox Utat, a device capable of stopping all nuclear fusion within a star. The Utat's inventor, wise to the fact they wanted it, had it hidden on Risa in the 22nd century. Though they discovered that Jean-Luc Picard was destined to destroy the artifact in 2366, they somehow decided against trying again once they had been foiled on that occasion. Far be it from us to criticise the well-laid plans of a couple of Orgons, but would it not have made more sense to let events play out, thus giving them the location of said device and trying again? By the 27th century, the temporal wars were brewing, meaning that technology, even if denied to them once, would not be hard to find again. We don't know for certain that, just because we haven't seen them to date, these two may well be plotting another attempt at retrieving the device. They may even have already done so, leaving Picard to enjoy his holiday with Vash and inadvertently inspiring the Romulan and Klingon scientists into studying trilithium to adapt their research to stellar destruction. They may, in fact, have already had the last laugh. Number 8. T'Pol. T'Pol, not to be confused with T'Pol, was a Vulcan isolationist encountered by Jean-Luc Picard in 2370. She was posing as a Romulan mercenary named Telera, working with Arctis Baran and his pirates, searching for pieces of a device known as the Stone of Gaul. It was a psionic resonator capable of turning individuals' negative thoughts into a deadly weapon. She was exposed by Picard and taken into custody, leading to the destruction of the device, but she lived on. So too did the movement. The Vulcan isolationist movement still existed, in an altered form, as far into the future as the 32nd century. This version of the group seems to have achieved at least political stability, though remained a thorn in President Tarina and Saru's sides. Back to T'Pol. She believed in the expulsion of all non-Vulcans from the homeworld and the eventual cessation of relations between her people and the rest of the galaxy. For her, it made logical sense to channel her hatred into her actions, but be under no illusion that hatred was strong enough to kill. It is very unlikely that she went to her cell without revenge in her heart. After all, it's only logical to strike back at those who would seek to derail your plans, is it not? Number 7. Armus. Armus is one of the darker entries on this list, and that has nothing to do with the fact that he's a giant oil slick. He is a manifestation of the hate and cruelty that his former compatriots sought to rid themselves of, solidified in a manner of speaking, stewing in his own rage. Though he is responsible for the death of Tasha Yar, he became something of a joke as the years passed. Despite his fearsome power, including the ability to kill with a wave of his arm, or to inflict torture and pain on those nearest him, Armus lacked any sort of focus. He seemed to visit pain for the simple pleasure of it, which became his weakness. Captain Picard whipped him into a frenzy, thus breaking his concentration and allowing people to escape. By the time Mariner makes her prank call to Armus years later, he remains on Vagra 2, raging at the taunts, unable to do much about it. Yet it must be remembered that he brought Shuttlecraft 13 down to his world with his power. While one can assume warning buoys were placed in orbit over his world, we can all agree that they don't have a history of perfect efficacy. The day may well come when the Enterprise G answers a hail, only to find this oily slick staring right back at them. Number 6. The Vad War. A question for you, if you will. If you were once the dominant power in the quadrant and went into stasis firmly in that belief, only to awaken to find the quadrant had forgotten you, would you not try to seek out what you had lost? Such was the issue facing the Vad War in Star Trek Voyager's Dragon's Teeth. They had been a force to be reckoned with in centuries past, yet they were an endangered species by the 24th century. When they were brought out of stasis by an unsuspecting Voyager, they quickly made their plans to retake that which was lost to them. The truly chilling thing about the end of that episode, and a huge shame that has yet to be revisited, is that dozens of Vad War ships made it into the safety of their spatial tunnels, thus allowing them to travel huge distances and, presumably, seek a new homeworld to begin their plans again. This, combined with the last-minute betrayal by Voyager, they had a very good reason to be fair, paints a stark picture of what future Starfleet Vad War relations might look like. These fighters may have escaped in small ships, but they are legion, for they are many. Number 5. Sela. Rent free. We know, Sela again. The duplicitous Romulan agent poses a serious threat to the Alpha and Beta quadrants, having already helped bring the Klingon Empire to its knees during the Civil War and almost succeeding in the invasion of Vulcan. That's the thing. She's really quite good at what she does. Is it her fault that Data was there to foil her plans? The Hobus supernova shattered not just the surface of Romulus, but the structure of the Empire itself. The former commander was, presumably, cast aside once her involvement in Spock's attempted coercion was discovered, but, to quote Praetor Shinzon, as often happens, a new government came to power. Neral may have been Praetor by Inter Arma Enum Silent Legis, but he had already been deposed by Star Trek Nemesis. While revenge against the Romulan Senate may be a somewhat pointless endeavour at this stage, Sela's seemingly constant thorn, Data, is not only alive by 2401, but he is thriving. If there was ever anyone deserving of a visit from this vengeful former golden child, it's the new golem hero of Jupiter's Drag Race. Number 4. Toral. Love them or hate them, but the House of Duras has endured for hundreds of years. One of Toral's ancestors plagued the crew of the NX-01 until Jonathan Archer put a rather final statement on things in the Delphic Expanse, though one of that man's descendants would go on to facilitate the massacre on Khitomer. Toral is simply the latest in a long line of little gits, ready and waiting to accept Romulan aid before being abandoned by his aunts. To be fair, that was probably for the best, as things didn't exactly end well for them. Toral himself would attempt to find the Sword of Kahless to aid him in his struggle to retake the Klingon Empire, but alas, no beans there. The last that anyone knows of Toral, he was in the Gamma Quadrant, having taken a resounding beatdown from Worf, Kor, and Jadzia. It is unclear what his military strength, if any, currently is. However, with the Klingon Empire shrouded in so much mystery by the beginning of the 25th century, it may well be that Toral is finally leading the House of Duras in its glorious vengeance against Martok's High Council. Or he could be stuck in Dominion territory, desperately trying to make enough Ketracel White to buy passage home. Who's to say? Number 3. The Devidians. The Devidians were discovered almost simultaneously in both the 24th century and the 19th century, going by Earth's calendar. They operated from a base on Devidia 2, travelling through space and time to hunt for food in San Francisco of the past. As often happens, an Enterprise crew travelled through time and put a stop to their shenanigans. That said, and accepting that the Devidia 2 base was destroyed by a volley of photon torpedoes, it seems highly unlikely that Devidian people would simply stop trying to find their snacks on homeworlds of their foes. Perhaps they really did only have one base, which is just so foolish from a strategic standpoint, so we'll assume that isn't the case, but they can't have been the only ones engaging in this food run. While Earth may not have panned out, they certainly found success in time travel. With that, it stands to reason that they would try again, and again, as many times as it took to find the one place and time that suited them best. Though the female Devidian seemingly died, she did get a good look at Picard and Guinan before she went, and we have no idea what death looks like in Devidian anatomy. Perhaps her memories survived, transferring through the Devidian people, allowing them to begin concocting years of revenge and torture. Or maybe she's worm food. Either way, what the heck are the rest of them up to? Number 2. Digor. Digor was an odd Klingon who might get along very well with Toral, and indeed the House of Duras in general. He was once the head of a wealthy Klingon house, though he envied the House of Kopak. He wasn't strong enough to openly challenge his rival, so instead he targeted Kopak's finances, spending years ruining him. Though Kopak tossed a spanner in Digor's plans by dying, awkward. In normal Klingon situations, this would seemingly have left the door open for Dagor to take over, yet one little Ferengi stood in his way. Through a series of unfortunate events, Quark ended up standing before the Klingon High Council, exposing Dagor as the financial criminal he truly was. After Dagor raised his bat'leth to kill him, Gowron had him served with discommendation and expelled from the Empire. Having spent so many years planning for domination, only to be tossed aside in so light a manner, Dagor would hardly have taken this lying down. After all, he was the son of the house that had once pillaged Starbase 1, putting all 80,000 inhabitants to the sword. Frankly, this is a dish that's going to be served freezing, and Quark may need all of the protection that his brother, Gran Nagus Rom, can muster. Number 1. The Bluegills. The Bluegills, despite one that may or may not have been a model, have not appeared in the Alpha Quadrant since Commander Remick went boom. That, combined with the sudden death of all of their operatives after the Queen's vaporization, was sure to raise some buggy eyebrows on their homeworld. Where exactly was said homeworld? Though the Borg would quickly take their place in galactic events and the writers' minds, the bugs were a terrifying threat to the security of Starfleet. While this first foray was foiled, a homing beacon was shared with the remainder of their forces. Depending on their power structure, they may be mourning the loss of a great ruling queen, and they may be more than curious as to what exactly happened to her. Their intentions were anything but friendly, resulting in the deaths of several prominent Starfleet officers. Their one weakness, that fin that allowed them to breathe sticking out the back of their hosts' necks, seems an easy thing to overcome. They are clearly technologically advanced, so one must wonder what they're currently planning for the Alpha Quadrant in Starfleet. Starfleet tends to get infiltrated every second Tuesday at this point, so perhaps now is the time that they will return in force, ready to take over all officers under the age of 25. Well, what's that? We've done that one. Okay, 26 then. That's everything for our list today, folks. Thank you so much for watching along. You are awesome. Please don't forget to check out the article over on whatculture.com. We really enjoyed it. You are great, you are deadly, you are stunning, and make sure that you look after yourself till I see you again. Make sure that you live long and prosper. Please follow us on all the various socials. We're at TrekCulture, I'm at Sean Ferrick, and you are at Being a Legend. Thanks very much, folks. See you soon.